When did you first know that it was going to be a little buck wild?
It was definitely a New York welcome. I want to say that it was something. Yeah, I mean, driving in. Honestly, we drove. Obviously, driving through the city is terrible. Start stop, like traffic to the game, traffic to the stadium. We did have a police escort, but when all 4 lanes are blocked, the police escort doesn't really help. I mean, we drove right through kind of the tailgate area, I guess, where all these New York City fans that you're describing were all there, and the bus had to go really, really slow. And they were banging on the bus. They were throwing beer at the bus. They were showing us some fingers that aren't really nice fingers. They were. They certainly let us know that we weren't so welcome.
Welcome back to the Player Manager Podcast. I'm Zealand Shannon here with my partner in crime, in podcasting, and in YouTubing, Inter Miami's Julian Gressel. I have to ask, just because we are now on YouTube, right? Are you getting recognized more in the street because of all this YouTube stuff, people coming up, in a way that they obviously weren't before because you're a professional player and everything?
No, not yet. So subscribe. We need more subscribers. We need more people. We need more people to join this movement.
What can I say? He's already got the hang of it. Yeah. Hashtag chat. Please subscribe. No, that's exciting. I did send, because you were in New York, obviously, this weekend. I did send my friend to the game with explicit instructions about what to yell at you if you ever ended up in his corner, but it never happened. He was going to say that you were his least favorite person on the podcast. He's an NYCFC fan, so he's going to try. He needed advice on how to get in your head. I was trying to help.
Well, the New York City fans honestly tried to get in our heads on the way to the game already, so I'm sure we'll talk about that. But no, but honestly, I was in Atlanta, and people recognized me a ton there. Probably more so than anywhere else I've been still. So that was quite nice. So shout out to all my Atlanta fans. Still love you.
No, hey, that's impressive. You've got staying power, and it's also a testament to Atlanta's got some great fans, man. They have some fantastic fans. Not they're the enemy now, obviously, but they have some great fans. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed to the YouTube so far, of course. And we will be taking a look behind the scenes in our Miami today and every other day that we record this podcast. So if that's what you're into, then we really appreciate you following along. We'll also be taking a look behind the scenes of the manager side of this podcast. But nobody ever seems to have any idea what I do. So we just kind of explain that, go along best we can, and just keep you up to date. I was in TwitchCon. I was at TwitchCon this weekend, and that's the only reason that I wasn't able to give Julian a tour of the city. But we do have a great show for you. Of course, we're going to talk about Julian being in New York, Julian being generally a superstar, first pitch and the whole 9 yards, and playing a couple of games. The playoffs are nearly upon us, which will be our first playoffs together. So I can't wait for the incredibly canned answers while you get closer and closer to hopefully an MLS Cup. And we do have a very important special guest. I buried the lead for you. We have a special guest, a true MLS legend in Atlanta's Dax McCarty, somebody that you just played against in the last week, a man who's retiring this season. He will be joining us later in the podcast.
I want to start with TwitchCon.
Okay.
I interrupted you there, didn't I?
Hey, you got me. You knew exactly. Hey, we've got that. Okay. What do you want to start with?
How was TwitchCon? I have absolutely no idea what that would be like, how that is. What did you do there?
So, TwitchCon, right? This is not somewhere that sports video game playing people typically end up. Okay. This is for Twitch is the online streaming platform. If, your age bracket will probably determine whether you've heard of it or not, or watched it at some point. But the main people at TwitchCon are typically, these very popular gamers and kind of content creators. And is a sports gamer, you are not. It's not necessarily a one-to-one transition, but I've streamed on Twitch for a long time, and Twitch is gracious enough to invite people out there. I was one of those people. And so it was really nice to be there. It's basically you meet fans, right? Who obviously fans from the Player Manager podcast, right? That's who's there, and you network with people. Yes, the millions of listeners of this podcast, they were all there, right? They were in droves. I barely got out of the airport alive. It's the same. It's basically like traveling with Inter Miami. And then you network. I mean, it's the same as any business conference. If whoever's listening to this has a conference that you go to, there's a bunch of brunches and after hours, rooftop
Okay.
cocktail hours where you meet and you schmooze other people. It's a bunch of brands and content creators around. If you keep this YouTube thing up, you'll end up at something like that one day, and you just start talking to a bunch of different brands about how all the ways that they would like to work with you in Twice on Sunday, and that's kind of what happens on the periphery of it. The main part is just it's fun. They got like mini golf. You walk around the show floor. It's really hard to explain if you don't go there. They have an artist section where there's a bunch of artists that maybe some of them stream their work. It just kind of, it is the internet culture brought to life. What I can tell you is that my dad, who is somebody that barely knows how to click a mouse on a computer, went to TwitchCon and walked in and was there for about 10 minutes. And he went, you know what? I'm good. Just like turned around and just kind of walked out and went and got himself a hamburger, you're like a frog in boiling water before you know enough internet stuff that you show up at TwitchCon and like, oh, I understand what's happening. But I walk in both worlds.
You know what I like about this is that I feel like you have all these people that haven't met in real life, right? That are just meeting through the internet potentially, or most of the time through Twitch or somebody, I don't know, watching you, for example, stream, right? And then, but you still have this connection all of a sudden, right? This come together, the socialization moment, which is a cool thing, I think, to even with being so remote and it being so like almost like you're hiding your identity in a way, right? A lot of the time.
Some people legitimately never show their face. There's VTubers where they have these animated characters they play, but they never show their face. And so when you meet them in person, they have like a COVID mask on and a beanie on. So you just really kind of see their eyes, they keep their identity hidden. So, I mean, it is, even in person, you can not actually know who they are, but still interact with them and know them.
Yeah. Interesting. But that's just a cool note.
Yeah. It's kind of it's a flashpoint. Basically, all the streamers show up there and we all go on each other's streams for a couple of days. And we all catch up on, what we want to do and kind of you set your antenna for the direction that you want to go in the next year. Basically.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the idea. So I guess it would kind of be like an all-star game, maybe.
All right.
It would be the same feel as an all-star game. We go, how's the season going? How's the stream going? How you liking this game? Whatever, that sort of stuff. TwitchCon is the Twitch all-star game. And then you just have a bunch of kind of, that's why did I not come up with that metaphor instead of trying to explain it for 6 to 7 minutes? But no, it is a great time. I'm also happy to be in my own bed because San Diego is as far away from New York as London. So that is not a short flight.
Yeah. See
that. Too bad. Yeah, no, it was. I took a red eye back and I am not somebody built for a red eye, Julian. I am struggling today, but we persist. But with TwitchCon in the rearview mirror, Inter Miami did go undefeated over that same weekend. The road trip to Atlanta and New York City, undefeated is probably, let's say that's the PR term for it. You guys pulled out a couple of draws, but it was Messi's first match inside the 5 boroughs of New York, and that must have been exciting. Obviously, then you also have the chase for the Supporters Shield, the chase for history, which is still on in spite of those 2 draws. So how'd you feel coming out of the weekend?
A little bit disappointed about the results, for sure. It was a long week for us where we traveled on Tuesday to Atlanta, spent a few days there, and then we went straight to New York after that. So we didn't get to come home after. We were on the road all week. And giving up, a late equalizing goal in Atlanta, obviously 90 plus minutes. And then the same thing happens again with basically the last play in New York, 90 plus minutes. Something that, are 4 points that we're losing that are really, really upsetting, honestly, because yes, we do have, that single season points record is still there. And also the Supporter Shield is still not in our hands. I think people forget about that, where that can still get tight at the end of the day. So, we wanted to win those games. I think they were winnable games. And we ultimately didn't do that. And I really hope that that's just a big lesson that we can learn going into the playoffs, and that teams, 1 goal leads, 1 set piece at the end, 1 wonder strike like in Atlanta, and all of a sudden, you find yourself tied and potentially in a playoff situation have to go to extra time or penalties or anything like that. So certainly, hopefully, good lessons.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about the lessons in terms of giving up early goals. At least you
Yeah,
finally, you
didn't.
took those
Yeah.
to heart. That went that went fabulously for a change, and yet maybe you should be giving up the early goals, and you're able to win the games. But the New York game was the one that caught my attention first, not just because I live here, and then of course had to be out of town the one weekend that you ended up being here, not just because I had deployed my friends into the stands to try and chirp you with podcast related facts, but also because the atmosphere, I knew nobody quite knew exactly what it was going to be like, but I expected it to be over the top. Because as somebody that lives in New York, there is a very large expat community of South Americans and Central Americans. And a lot of them, as I found out in some of the YouTube videos we made a whole Inside NYCFC kind of YouTube video following the match day experience. You meet a lot of these guys are rabid NYCFC fans.
Yeah.
I mean, just really rabid, but in the South American sense. I'm talking shirtless and ski masks before the game and flares in
Yeah.
the stand, and they're pretty wild about it. So what was the first time that you maybe noticed that it was going to be a little more intense than normal? Because I saw some of the videos of you guys going into the stadium, but I just wanted to like, when did you first know that it was going to be a little buck wild?
It was definitely a New York welcome. I want to say that it was something. Yeah, I mean, driving in. Honestly, we drove. Obviously, driving through the city is terrible. Start stop, like traffic to the game, traffic to the stadium. We did have a police escort, but when all four lanes are blocked, the police escort doesn't really help. So it took us a while to kind of get to the stadium from the hotel. When you drive kind of through the city. And then once we got closer, yeah, there was just, I mean, we drove right through kind of the tailgate area, I guess, where all these New York City fans that you're describing were all there, and the bus had to go really, really slow. And they were banging on the bus. They were throwing beer at the bus. They were showing us some fingers that aren't really nice fingers. They were. They certainly let us know that we weren't so welcome. Some of them we're trying to get pictures of obviously the stars that we have on our team, and especially Leo, but some of them were also certainly letting us know that we're not welcome, and that they want us to lose big time. And honestly, I felt like, or I was thinking that kind of, I mean, Yankee Stadium in general, right, over the New York City FC's existence hasn't really, I think, given justice to the fan base, the fans that they have, right? Like, it hasn't really been able to show exactly of kind of what that fan base is about. I feel like it's a difficult stadium to really showcase that, in a sense. Like, I don't know, you talk about Nashville, or you talk about Cincinnati, or you talk about Columbus, or even into Miami, right? Like, those fan cultures are so much more present because of the stadium situation and how the setup is in general. While at Yankee Stadium, I never really got that sense before, and this was the first time really that I did. But it was an awesome atmosphere. It was cool to see Yankee Stadium filled up. I mean, it's a historic place, right? And to kind of experience that on the field was cool, and was definitely different than the times that I'd been there before.
But was there a buzz? When your Yankee Stadium is weirdly, if you know your Zealand lore, here is a stadium that I'm kind of strangely familiar with. I used to work for the Yankees as a minor league broadcaster, and I ran the scoreboard for them and everything. So I would be able to go to games at the actual Yankee Stadium, and I've been around under the concourse multiple times, and it is really cool and really
Yeah.
old and really historic. Was there a pinch me moment? Because you've obviously played in Yankee Stadium before, but I've seen the videos from inside the stadium before the game even, and it was just buzzing. It was like there was just that certain energy that can only be captured in those weird games, at least from the way it looked on the outside.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a pinch me moment, but walking out onto the field, I always like to take a look around, right? And like to look up, for different reasons. One, to give me confidence so I don't stare at the ground all the time, and I'm actually standing up tall, and being proud of being here and all those things. But two, also seeing the environment and seeing the fans, and that was cool. Seeing so many people there, and kind of the anticipation of the game. And I knew obviously the history behind the Yankees, and kind of that venue and everything. So I kind of, felt that energy, and that was certainly a nice moment to walk out and kind of see that. And once the game starts, it's really, really just focusing on the game. But obviously wouldn't have liked to see how it was at the very, very end of the game, where everybody was somewhat celebrating for the 1-1 tie, and had a good time afterwards. So that was not so pleasant. But before the game and walking out was definitely cool, and you can definitely sense the energy and the history of it all.
They are going to get a new stadium, by the way. I don't know if that had ever made it down the grapevine. 2027,
Yep.
I think, which means it'll probably open in 2029, knowing how these things normally work, right? But the target is that they're going to put it in Queens. And as the guy that one of the guys we met pointed out, he was like, well, you probably have the largest Mexican population in the entirety of the United States. Like, is the concentration in Queens right next to where they're putting the new stadium? And then the Ecuadorian guy said, well, yeah, I think that's the biggest Ecuadorian population in the entire United States. Like, right. So the stadium's probably going to have, if you think the drive into the Bronx was, a little wild, like it's probably going to be full cop escort to get into that stadium, especially if you're rolling in with Messi, if I had to guess. But once you mentioned once the match
I hope I get to experience it. Yeah.
Oh, you got to play like 4 more years, Julian. You opted into that right now? Hey. Yeah, well, I mean,
that should be on the menu. That should be okay.
Okay. All right. I didn't know. I'm not trying to get in trouble with the wife or anything. I don't know what I don't know what the long
She's good.
the long term, not stepping on any toes here with the long term plans, but that would be awesome, because that's definitely going to be a great stadium, at least talking to those guys. But the stadium that they're in now, you said once the match kicks off, you're kind of into it. Well, I'm curious though, because I've obviously been to a few matches there. That's a weird field. Not just the feeling around the field, but the actual size of the field. And, the walls here, and then all of a sudden there's another line over here with a giant space. And I'm pretty sure, based off of, relative size in MLS, it's also quite small. So is there anything that you have to do specifically to prepare to play at Yankee Stadium, or is that something you just kind of ignore and play your game?
I mean, we had so little time, honestly, that it wasn't really that big of a thing for us to really focus on, or we didn't really have time to focus on it. Yes, you talk about it more, and then when you walk the pitch at warm-ups and training and pre-game, you kind of get a more of a feel for it during that time, and you try to be more aware of it, especially how the grass plays, because it plays a little bit different than a regular soccer pitch too. So dimensions is certainly something that, I don't know, I feel like I'll never get used to unless I play for New York City, probably. But yeah, it's I don't really like it, honestly. It's not something that I think is great. It's not a great representation of what the game should be like, I feel like. And as historic and as great the stadium is, right, it's not a soccer stadium, it's a baseball stadium. And I think we can't lose sight of that. And therefore I'm really happy that they are getting a new stadium. I'm a little bit bummed it's going to take them a few more years. But at the same time, baseball stadiums shouldn't be for soccer matches.
What's the worst part about playing a match in a baseball stadium?
Well, I think the Yankee Stadium, at least from my perception, and I don't know if this has been like proven or really out there or not, but from my perception, if you stand in the middle of a goal, right, and you look at the penalty spot in front of your goal there, you should be looking straight across the whole field, right? So you should be looking at the kickoff spot and at the other penalty spot and at the middle of the goal at the other side. But I'm standing at one side of Yankee Stadium and I look straight at the penalty spot. I feel like I'm looking like at the corner of the box and not at the other goal. Whoa. So like the field to me is a little bit like, it just seems like lopsided. Yeah, like almost like that. Yeah. So I don't know if what they do in terms of finagle the dimensions in there to just make it work somehow. But again, that's my feeling and my understanding. I don't know if that is kind of true or not, but it's just kind of what it seems like at times. And that just throws you off, where at one goal, it's like almost like just a tilted goal, one side of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's either it's actually tilted, or the dimensions of the stadium are so weird that it's an optical illusion on your brain, because you think it should be going. But either way, it's messed up, because either way your brain is thinking that the goal's somewhere it's not, right? That things are where they are, but they're just not there.
Yeah, it's different. So yeah, I don't know. That's my feeling every time I'm there, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we can prove that. Can we prove that somehow? Can you go there at night, sneak in or something?
You could totally just bring like something very straight, maybe like a laser pointer, and just laser point it. Right? I'm going to break into Yankee Stadium tonight and try and figure that one out for you. I'll get back to you. We can't wait for me to be doing this podcast from jail next week. That will be also incredibly fun. Into the action itself, just to give Leo Campana some credit, he is the one that scored the goal in the 75th minute.
Now, Messi carrying forward, Alba's in, Alba cross, Campana scores!
But then, of course, the stoppage time goal that I got to make sure I get this right. I believe my friend texted me when this ball went in because he was, of course, worried that he was going to lose to you and Messi and everybody else. And he just texted me one word, and it was catharsis once that ball went in. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. All my degrees, I can rub them together and start a fire. I don't know if I can tell you the exact definition of the word catharsis, but I believe it means I believe it means relieved. While we look that definition up, here is the actual goal, and it was a loud reaction from the crowd here.
And now the corner from New York. Desperation time! Oh, yeah! The New York kid, James Sands at the death, leveling Yankee Stadium!
Yeah, not a reaction from the crowd I would have liked to hear in that moment. I was obviously on the bench at that time. I had gotten subbed out, and last play of the game, and you give up first a free kick and then a corner, and then you give up a goal like that, and you end up drawing the game. And it's, like I said, two points lost, I think, at the time. It was, they had some chances, we had some chances. It was like a back and forth game, obviously on the back end of a really tough week. So yeah, come away with the draw, but honestly not really a great feeling walking out of there with that.
Catharsis is the process of releasing or thereby providing relief from strong or repressed emotions. So it was basically, he was celebrating quite a bit. Now, of course, James Sands, the first homegrown player for NYCFC, who I used to work with his older sister at NBC. So this all just comes full circle. Have I ever told you that story? This is totally unrelated, and I know you were just talking about how you're sad about the goal. I was working at NBC for the 2016 Olympics as an intern. And then my chair was right next to his older sister. I don't remember her first name, but her last name was obviously Sands. And she was telling me about how her younger brother was pretty good at soccer and might actually make it to MLS one day. And then 2 years later, I happened to flip the TV on or something, and James Sands is making his debut for NYCFC or something. I was like, wait a second. I looked it up, of course, on the Instagram and everything, and it was just probably the weirdest professional athlete story of my life, and we've now managed to tie that into this podcast I do as well. So it just continues to get I've never met James Sands, but I just have I rate her telling me that. Just, I was like, I played soccer for a while. She's like, oh, yeah, my brother's pretty good, too. I think he might actually, in the back of your mind, you're just going, yeah, sure.
Jimmy, I guess, or whatever, James. Jimmy is what I called him at the national team when we played together. He's a super nice guy and really, really down to earth and awesome to talk to. And I was on the same team as him at the national team. So, that was a lot of fun with him, but he should have he could have waited for his first MLS goal, by the way.
Wait, no, it wasn't his first ever.
Yeah, it was. What a moment for him. Congrats.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that is, obviously. Do you even say something after the game that you obviously on a first name basis with him, you're shaking hands and you're like, come on, man, you had to do that for this game?
He was kind of all over the place. I didn't really see him, to be honest. He was super happy, obviously. I think he took the ball with him and kind of just went to see his teammates, so I didn't get to see him after. I got to see him before and just said hello. Yeah.
And what's the dressing room like after a goal like that? I mean, having taken the lead, wild atmosphere, a long day, and then you'd lose it in the last play of the game. What's the message after?
Tata's usually really quiet after games in general, win or lose. So he didn't say anything there either. But it's not great. I mean, everybody's frustrated, annoyed at what had happened and that we couldn't close out the game one way or another, if that's scoring a second goal or if that's just seeing out the 1-0, and I think clean sheets in general aren't really they're not really coming easy to us. We haven't really had many of those this year, and that's something that we know that now, playoff time comes around, that those get more and more important. And if you can keep zeros, that means you have a really good chance of advancing, especially with the players that we have. So, the immediate feelings weren't great.
And I'm curious to like Messi, Suarez, Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets. How do they react to those sorts of results? Because that's the sort of thing that, we see the public reaction and they're all very professional about it. But once they get into the dressing room, is Jordi Alba or Luis Suarez, I would always imagined had that kind of pit bull personality. Is he up and going, we got to be better than that, guys? Or is everybody just very professional about it, even in the dressing room?
It kind of depends, honestly.
I'd say professional is probably the wrong word. I don't want to make it sound like doing that's unprofessional, but more like reserved.
Yeah, no, I mean, it depends on the results. There were certainly times where guys were a little bit more pissed and kind of let it known, and be loud. I mean, that's what leaders are there for, right? To also give the other guys an earful at times and kind of let it known that it's not okay for us to kind of tie those games. But in this case, no, it was really more just quiet, just because it's not necessarily something where we had played terrible all game and we kind of deserved to tie or something like that. It was really just one moment and kind of a set piece goal like that, where at least that's how I see it, right? It's something that is fixable pretty easily in terms of a mindset, in terms of just cluing in and really trying to focus and seeing out those tight moments, which is really beginning of games where we concede goals sometimes, and end of games where we've now conceded two in a row as well. So these moments we need to be better at, and we need to focus on and emphasize a little bit more. But this one wasn't necessarily, pretty reactive, I want to say, right after.
Well, it's probably considering, you're top of the league and all those things. And I know that could still change. It's a little easier to lose when you're still sitting on top of the pile. But after that solemn atmosphere in the locker room, you had to pick yourself up pretty quickly because you got to go to MLS studios. I've had the chance to go there. It's awesome. Because it is actually pretty close to Yankee Stadium, and you got to just be on MLS coverage that day.
So without further ado, we don't need Sasha, we don't need Kevin, because we have this man right here, Julian Gressel. Thank you so much for joining us here on MLS Countdown. It is a pleasure.
Nice. What was that turnaround like? I mean, you're just taking a quick shower and then you have to make your TV appearance or something?
Basically, yeah, that was it. I mean, it was something. It was a great opportunity for me. It was a lot of fun. To summarize it really quick, it was a lot of fun and just awesome to kind of see what goes into, especially the pregame show, right, and MLS 360 on Apple TV. And so since we had a 2:00 afternoon game, which doesn't happen too often, there were obviously all the other games still going on at 7:30 p.m. So MLS had reached out to Inter Miami to see if I wanted to stick around after in New York, spend an extra night in New York, fly home the next day, while that night coming to the MLS studios and commentating and being part of kind of the MLS 360 whip around show, while also having a couple segments in there in the pregame kind of MLS warm up show. And it was I showered, I packed an extra pack of clothes, a nice dress shirt and some jeans, and jumped in the car with actually Sasha Kleshtin and Kevin Egan, who were also on the MLS 360 show with me. They were at the game, and jumped in the car with them, headed over to the MLS studio, got a quick bite to eat, jumped in front of the camera for the pregame show, and then jumped right into MLS live action. And honestly, it was so much fun. I am interested in that type of stuff, hence also why I'm doing this with you and why we're here. And to have an opportunity like this, to feel it out as a current player, was just cool. It was just a really, really cool experience, and something that I'm hopefully get to do a little bit more in the coming years.
Was that your first time on a live TV set doing that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do interviews on live TV, usually post game sometimes, but like sets and like in the studio.
Yeah, being part of the show. Okay.
Yeah.
Then what was the craziest part about it to you?
For me, I mean, honestly, I was nervous. I was probably more nervous than I was going into a game. I mean, it's different, when all of a sudden you get asked about a lineup and you have to break down the Columbus Crew lineup like they asked me in the pregame show. And what I look forward into it. And I didn't have much prep time before. Like, I got in there, ate something quick and bam, they were like, all right, here we go. We got to go. It was all sorts of different things, right? Seeing how Kaylin Kyle, for example, did the moderation, the walk through the show, how much she reads off of iPads while the viewer doesn't see her, for example, and how much information goes into that, how hard that is. I believe how somebody's talking into my ear while I'm trying to say something and giving me cues and like things like that. Like those types of things are just so
15
new to
seconds.
me, you know? Yeah, exactly. And so that's just kind of just cool to see and kind of really, really awesome to be a part of. And something that I wanted to test for myself if I wanted to do that in the future. And I certainly do, because it was cool. It was a really cool experience. But credit obviously to the whole crew there. I mean, they make it easy for me, right? They set me up in the right ways. And especially then when it got to watching the games at the MLS 360 kind of whip around show where you basically just jump from goal to goal. You talk about the goal and you have some banter between each other and all those things. So it was a really, really cool environment to really experience and see.
Do you feel like our witty banter prepared you for the banter on the MLS Whip Around show?
Zealand, you are the reason why I succeeded there.
Oh, that was so nice. You're the nicest person ever. Oh. Julian Gressel, everybody, future TV legend, current MLS legend. But,
well, maybe we'll get our TV show once. Just like the Cooligans, you know, they started a podcast, went to, you know, levels, and then all of a sudden, bam, player manager on Apple TV in 2027, opening at New York City's new stadium. We're live.
Well, hey, if you're gonna be playing in it for a few years, you can do the pregame show and then run in and then come out and do the postgame show. You can just do the pregame show in cleats or something. It'd be fun.
That's right. No, but that's what it really was meant to be, to kind of get me some more practice and experience it, and ultimately see if that's something down the line that I want to be part of more. And I do.
Yeah, you got the itch for it now. I think after that one appearance, you're gonna be calling up MLS again, like, hey man, we're playing at 2 p.m. again.
They know now, hopefully, to call me in. Hopefully I did a good enough job for them to call me back. So
everything that I saw, you were doing a fantastic job. Even though you're under fire with the lights, camera, action, you were crushing it. And we're bringing somebody else into the spotlight now. Speaking of legends, somebody that you played against, obviously, the Atlanta game, which ended in a 2-2 draw. And I'm just curious, did you ask Dax McCarty to come on the podcast on the field, or did you wait till after?
I actually asked him after the game via Instagram, because I didn't even see him after the game for some reason. I was like talking to Brad Guzan, talking to Brooks Lennon, and then I was looking for him to talk to him and to ask him to come on. And then I don't know where he was. I don't know where he went, if he went inside already or not. So I just messaged him on Instagram after. So, yeah.
Julian Gressel sliding in the DMs. And as a result,
here he is, Dax McCarty. Thank you so much for joining us. It has, first of all, been a true pleasure of playing against you throughout these years. I have always admired you. You were on the field against me in my first professional career game in Atlanta back in 2017. I'm sure that game was really memorable for you as well.
Sure.
But you have announced that it is your last season and you are retiring after 19 seasons. So congratulations for an unbelievable career. One that I look up to a lot. So thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, how you doing? How's everything going?
Thanks for having me, man. What a nice intro. I do remember that game vividly. I just got done telling you I just got my kids down. So you guys record at a different time than we do over at the Journeyman podcast. We like to try to record while the kids are in school and not when they're in bed, because right after they go down, usually mom and dad go down too. So you guys are getting me up late, but. No, man, the feelings are mutual, dude. I appreciate the kind words. Obviously, it's been a good run, and I was trying to think back when you were like, yeah, you were on the field for my first professional game. I didn't remember that was your rookie season, 2017. What an experience that was. What a game that was. Wow. That was in where was that?
At Bobby Dodd Stadium in
Atlanta.
Was Bobby Dodd. It wasn't at Mercedes-Benz. It was at Bobby Dodd.
I remember that vividly because we got our butts kicked. I'm pretty sure.
But you won.
Wait, when? No.
2-1.
Hold on, dude. You're misremembering. So that was the year that I had left Red Bull.
Oh, you did?
I left Red Bull end of 2016. But I remember the game you're talking about. So I was on the field in spirit, but maybe you're going senile a little bit, because I was actually in Chicago at that point, but I remember watching that game. So don't worry, I was there in spirit.
I messed up the whole intro of the whole podcast, dude. I'm so sorry. I mean, you
Dude,
have
that's
played
great.
over 480 games, so like
Yeah.
there is a ton,
There's a few.
So.
Yeah, I was
And
trying to.
yet
I was
he
trying to
still
think back.
remembered that he didn't play you in your first match where you thought.
Well, because I was trying to think about it. I was like, where was that? Was that at Red Bull Arena?
No,
was
but-
that at Bobby Dodd? Okay.
But
So
you
the
played
game
in
I'm thinking
Chicago,
of, the
so
game
that
I'm-
was like, I think it was like the third.
it
game
was
of
like,
the season.
yeah, it was the third or fourth
Yes.
game of the season. So you were just a couple games off, and the
Yes.
wrong team, but that's okay. Yeah, we played you guys at Bobby Dodd, and I remember we got a red card like 5 minutes into the game. And it was we were already losing 1-0, and it ended up, I think, 4-0. And I remember being absolutely miserable because it was like afternoon kickoff. You guys had a sold out Bobby Dodd, and you had a very informed Joseph and Miguel Almiron just running the show, and it wasn't fun. So yeah, you got a one up on us at that moment in time. But no, I wasn't on the field with the Red Bulls at that time.
I'm sorry about that.
Hey, you know what? All is forgiven. Like you said,
You know why?
I played a million games.
You know why I got confused? Because I was just on MLS 360 over the weekend with Bradley Wright Phillips and Sasha Kleshin, and all we did was talk about that game.
Yeah,
and I
right.
totally thought that I was like, oh, this is the third guy that I'm going to see, and
Yeah.
he was on that team too. I mean, you're a Red Bull legend, right? You're just coming
Sure.
off of that game in New York, obviously this weekend with Atlanta, and they did a nice little ceremony for you. So just take me back to that moment. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it was really nice, man. I knew they were going to do something for me. Our PR department had kind of, tipped me off, and they were like, "Look, if you have an issue with it, then let us know." And I was like, "Of course, like why would I have an issue? Like the way it ended for me at Red Bull definitely wasn't in the plans, and it was a little bit unfortunate, but I think enough time has passed now where we can let bygones be bygones, and that's water under the bridge. I have nothing but extremely fond memories of my time in New York. And so I knew my wife and my two sons, Cal and Owen, I knew they were going to be coming up to New York to watch the game. So after warmups ended, I was walking off the field and I was kind of like, all right, what's going on here? So I saw they had a really nice jersey for me with the amount of appearances that I made in MLS for them. And, the team president was on the field. And then out of nowhere, Jen, my wife, and the boys run out of the tunnel. And it was one of those surprises that, you as a parent, you feel it really deep in the heart. It really pulls on the heartstrings. And so them allowing me to have that moment, them, making a video for thanking me for my contributions when all I felt towards that club was gratitude for everything they did for me. It was a really nice moment, and it was a really nice moment for my family. And, my boys, they're too young to really know what's going on anyways. And they weren't even alive when during my Red Bull days, but just to have those videos and pictures and those memories to be able to show them a little bit later on in life to say, hey, your old man might have a bad back right now and he might limp around the house, but back in these Red Bull days, he was kind of a badass, like he kind of ran the show, on a soccer field. So it was a really nice moment. That moment was so nice. And then you put it against the backdrop of the end of that game where I didn't even get on the field, but we conceded a 97th minute equalizer. And you're like, I was on top of the world before the game started. And then I was so miserable when the game ended and just devastated that we didn't get 3 points because that was huge for the playoff push. But really special night overall, and definitely a moment I'll never forget.
Does that help put 19 years in perspective at all? Because that's a pretty mind-blowing amount of time to be in the churn of a professional athlete.
Sure.
I know Julian's been playing professionally for, 7, 8 years is a stretch. I just hate math, and so I'm not quite sure. But 19, I mean, I was 8 years old when you started your MLS career, and now I've got a few years left in this hairline. So how do you even try and look back at all of that in Do you feel like you almost forget some moments, or is it still all crystal clear?
Oh man, I have forgotten more moments than I care to admit, and that's the sad part about a long career is that you you try to go through each season when it ends and take stock of the good moments, the bad moments, the ups and the downs, and I thought I did that well at the end of every year, but then when I was in my younger single days, there would be a period of mourning where I would drink like heavily and just go party my face off. And then I'm like, oh, I probably should have done that. Now I'm forgetting games here and there. And so I definitely have had a lot of time the last couple years to reflect. Julian, you're going to play for a long time still. But when you get to your mid 30s, you start to ask questions. And so when I was 33 or 34, I started to think, I wonder how much time I have left. And I felt good. I still feel good, which is the crazy thing. At 37, I still feel pretty good, and I still feel like I'm playing at a relatively good level. But you always have to weigh how worth it is it to keep playing versus how worth it would it be to just retire and hang them up, right? Because so many professional athletes don't get to end their careers on their own terms. And I wanted to really be able to end my career on my own terms. And I wanted to be able to end my career where people looked at me and said, oh man, he had a great career. Not, oh man, he's still playing and he's absolutely terrible. He's a liability on the field. He's lost his legs, all this different type of stuff. So look, I feel like I could keep going. My head tells me I'm good enough to keep playing, but my heart tells me that it is the right time. 19 years is a really special number. I couldn't quite make it to 20. But I'm really proud about 19 years. And I think longevity is something that, to go along with all the good moments, the trophies you win, the relationships you make, the longevity of it, I think that speaks to another part of your game, right? You were able to adapt on different teams under different coaches, kind of like you, Julian. You've played, you've played for a few different coaches in a few different countries and a few different clubs, and you've still been able to make yourself valuable at those places. I think that's a really important thing for a player in MLS, to be able to show value in a salary cap league, right? That's just the reality of the situation. Not everyone can be a Graham Zusi or a Matt Beasler or like a Christian Roldan, Jordan Morris. Their careers are still going on, right? So I take a lot of pride in the cities that I've represented and the clubs I've represented, but it's been a fun 19 years.
So, I mean, with that, you've played with some of the biggest stars of this game, right? Like with the likes of like my idol, Bastian Schweinsteiger, for example, in Chicago, Thierry Henry at the Red Bulls. You've played against Zlatan, David Beckham, even Leo Messi, right? Is there a moment, maybe with those stars, maybe without, that kind of stands out that you tell your kids about one day as or grandkids, as a grandpa or anything like that? Is there this one thing? Or is it, like you said, the collective, the kind of...
So there's one moment for sure with Thierry that stands out above all the rest. And that is one that I'll have to tell my kids about later on in life, because that was off the field. That was more of Thierry being an unbelievable guy that you don't really hear a lot about it. Long story short, after one of our seasons ended, he texted me and a few of my buddies that were a little bit younger, and he asked if we wanted to go over to London with him. And he took us over to London. And he took us out to the nicest restaurants, took us out to the best bars. We went and got to watch Arsenal train. He put us up in a hotel, like just gave us the red carpet treatment, right? And like that moment for me was like, whoa, like this guy is so much more than just like a global superstar, right? Like he's a good guy who wants to show his teammates, a little bit about like how he is off the field and how he treats people off the field. So that moment I'll tell them about later on. And obviously Thierry being the player he was. With Basti, with Schweinsteiger, it was different. That's going to be more of a collective, right? Like I was obviously a massive fan of Basti. He's your idol, right? German World Cup winner. But for me, I loved watching him play, and I really loved his game, but I didn't actually understand how good of a player he was until I played with him, because the beauty in his game was that he made everyone around him better. And it was just by doing simple things. He wasn't a step over crazy skill, like YouTube video type player. He was like a show up to training early, do the little things well, make sure that I'm playing at my highest level and make my teammates better. And that he did that at a world-class level. And I feel like for young players, especially now, it's all about flashy boots and highlight reel goals. And I'm thinking in my head, do you know what makes the best professionals is the guys who do the simple things well. And that was for me what Basti really embodied. And so when we went to Germany, I don't know if you remember this, Julian, but with the Fire in 2018, I believe, we got to go to Germany and we played a testimonial game against Bayern Munich with him. And he played the first half with us, with the Fire, and the second half with Bayern Munich. And so when we were coming out for halftime, I was the captain of Chicago Fire at the time. But I was like, dude, you need to wear the armband. Like, of course, like this is your testimonial. It's like 70,000 people here to see you. Like nobody knows who Dax McCarty is. They don't care, right? Like lead the team out. It's great. And that was always in the plan. So he wore the captain's armband out for us. He did it. And then at halftime, when he switched teams, he did this thing where he gave me the captain's armband, like still on the field, and he gave it to me. And I was like, man, that was a really cool moment. Just to see him in a Bayern Munich jersey, pass the captain's armband on to me in a Chicago Fire jersey. That was a moment I'll never forget. And that was one that really sticks out in my head as like being really special.
Those are cool stories, man. And you described Schweinsteiger, and I feel like I hear, obviously not at that level, but I feel like I hear guys like me and you, you know, like guys that show up, guys that work hard, guys that do the simple things that aren't flashy, that, you know, are there, dependable, kind of.
Hey,
listen,
I think you guys are flashy. I think you guys.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I think you're describing a poor man's Bastian Schweinsteiger as me, and I'm fine with that. I'm more than happy to take that moniker. You're doing yourself a disservice because look, the way, you know, I don't even know what your numbers are, but I do know that the number of assists that you've gotten in your career up to this point, you're probably on some sort of record-breaking pace. But if you keep going, yeah, dude. Basti, he's the type of guy that I think every young kid should look up to. Like that's the type of player that, in my opinion, is the model for success in the professional game. How many Neymars and how many Messis are out there in the world? Those are aliens, dude. Those are aliens. And those are players. Those are once in a generation players that don't come around often. But you know who does come around often? Guys that know how to grind and guys that can do the little things well, and guys that know what they're all about and will do things to help the team be better. Because those are the types of players, especially in MLS, that contribute to winning teams. You've been a part of 2 MLS Cup winning teams now, and you probably know better than me, certainly, that you can't win an MLS Cup unless you have the right balance of guys who are going to carry the water and guys who are going to do the little things well, and then the difference makers, the guys who are going to go and win you games, the Cuchos, right? The Messis, like the Suarezes, like these guys, you have to build a team around them for them to go and be special. So I'm more than happy to be like, hey, if I'm a poor man's Bastian Schweinsteiger, I can sleep very well at night.
Good. That's great to hear.
What's always stood out about you in your career is that you are somebody that I think if a person walks by on the street, they probably wouldn't assume you're a professional athlete.
Correct. Used car salesman is what I would assume they think.
But and this is something that, weirdly enough, before I even started making YouTube videos about soccer, way before I started doing this podcast, I knew you. I knew who you were, and I knew that was your game. That you're this person that kind of looks unassuming, and yet you're able to obviously have a 19-year career playing in MLS and playing with all these guys. That is also very against the grain for the people listening to this that maybe aren't from the U.S. That's against the grain of the way the U.S. normally develops players, which is kind of all physical ability first all the time. So first of all, how do you think you kind of beat that emphasis in U.S. training? And then how did you manage to make yourself, like, what tips do you have out there for people that would be unassuming future professionals?
Well, the tips that I have are go watch all the best players in the world that have played this game. Like go watch highlights of the players who have been the most successful players on the planet. Like at least in my generation that grew up, right? Like you look at Xavi, Andres Iniesta, Lionel Messi, Luka Modric. Go look at those guys and tell me, other than Messi having like otherworldly quickness and speed back when in his Barcelona days, none of those other guys were that imposing physically. So I think in the U.S., you mentioned it, that there is this tendency to lean towards big, strong, fast, rather than small, skillful, technical, cerebral, like make the game simple, make the game better. And I'm not saying that one is right or wrong, but for me, I had to adapt, right? Because I was never the biggest or fastest or strongest guy on the field. And so how was I going to compete with these guys that were maybe more athletic than me? I just used my head more. Because the game of soccer, the beauty of soccer is that because there's 11 guys on the pitch, those 11 players can bring different things to the table. It's not really like basketball where you got 5 guys and they're mostly all going to have to be very big and very athletic. That's just a reality of the sport. You can't be successful otherwise. But in soccer, that never for me really resonated, that you had to be big, strong, fast, athletic, because you could be really fit like I was. You could have a great mentality, which growing up I had a great mentality. I was a stubborn prick who was very not fun, not pleasant to be around when either I didn't play or when I didn't win or when I wasn't, when something didn't go my way. Like I had this very stubborn Irishness about me where I was very angry about me not playing well or not even playing enough or losing a game. And so I think a lot of it comes down to mentality. A lot of it comes down to, I was told a lot when I was young that I wasn't going to make it as a professional. And so I wanted to prove to those people who told me that I wouldn't make it as a professional that A, you're wrong, and B, you can become a professional athlete if you aren't gifted with all these special physical tools. Because I think we've seen in soccer, it's not just me, it's a majority of the sport are guys, and look, the game is changing a little bit, but a majority of the sport leading up to, call it 10 years ago, has been guys sort of like me who, look, you just have to try to outthink your opponent. And there will be, look, I'll lose a foot race if I'm starting on half field and trying to sprint with like a Christian Benteke or someone like that. Like I'm going to lose that race. So what do I have to do? Okay, I have to either kick him, let me foul him at this point in time, or I have to get a head start, right? And you just have to think about little things. And I think as you get older, you start to learn the tricks of the trade, right? Like how can you affect a game if you're not going to be sprinting the most, right? Like those are things that you think about. And those are things that I thought about when I was 14, 15 years old. I had to adapt. And so any advice for people that, might be told that they're too small? No, you're not. You're not too small, but you do have to work harder than everybody else. If you don't work harder than everybody else, then you have no chance.
I bet those people feel like idiots now after 19 seasons.
They probably felt like idiots when I turned pro in 2006, but I doubt they care much now. They're probably very old and senile.
Yeah, you can go brag against them in the retirement home if you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go. But I want to tie back. Obviously, we have a good amount of Inter Miami followers and Leo Messi followers here in the podcast. Yeah. And you famously traded jerseys with Leo after the 2023 Leagues Cup final.
I did.
I think you posted a picture. Obviously, you lost that game, which I'm sure stings a little bit. But you got away with the jersey. Where is that jersey now? Did you insure it? Is it somewhere in a nice spot? Obviously, you've changed teams. So did it come to Atlanta with you, for example, or is it still Nashville?
Of course. Yeah.
What's the situation with that?
Yeah, the jersey's like under my pillow right now. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding. I was hoping the jersey. It absolutely came with us to Atlanta. It's hanging up in my closet right now. I haven't had a chance to get it framed, but it will be framed. I talked about it a little bit. Obviously, the loss, it sucked. Like we lost the game, right? And I posted about it, and my only regret was that I shouldn't have posted the caption that I posted because it was a little bit in bad taste. But for the most part, I don't regret it because I'm Lionel Messi. I grew up as like a Lionel Messi fan, right? The Messi-Ronaldo debate was never a debate for me. It was always Messi. And look, talking about small players who like people probably wrote off, right? Even though he's an alien, he's an otherworldly guy, right? Like the thing I admire the most about a player like him is that he makes everyone else better. Like he is a guy who rather than score a goal, if he had a wide open goal, or he had a teammate that maybe was going through like a scoring drought or something, he would rather get an assist to help the teammate. That to me is always the type of player that he's been. I don't know the guy at all, but you could probably speak to that more than me. He just seems like he's that type of person and that type of player. So like, I really admire and respect that because he is the best player of all time and he could do whatever he wanted. But I always thought like that was super unique about him. And so look, my admiration for him was off the charts. And to be able to like, it was a really quick moment, right? After the game ended, I hadn't even thought about it. I shook a bunch of other people's hands and then I saw him, he still had his jersey and all I said was Cambio. And he was like in the tunnel. I was like, cool, whatever. So I got the jersey. And yeah, it's going to be framed for sure. I might, we might, my wife and I might.
Is it signed? No.
He didn't sign it. No, he didn't sign it. Which, look, it is what it is. It's still Messi's jersey. Maybe I'll ship it to you. You can get him to sign it.
There you go. Bring it
How about
over.
That? Yeah.
You.
So I'll have to talk to my wife about where that can go. My wife and I, when we're done here in Atlanta, we're going to move down to Florida eventually. We're Orlando people, so we're going back to Winter Park, Florida, and in our house there, we'll have probably like an office, and I'll probably go up in the office somewhere, I would think.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that's a special one.
before you frame it, if you want to get it signed, I feel like you know a guy now. So
all right, you're my guy, dude. You're my guy.
Make it happen.
Okay.
We'll try
Don't
and make
steal
it
it.
happen. Yeah.
Don't steal it.
I'm sure I have a way to get my own.
I'm sure you can get your own. I'm sure you can.
He's sneaking into the Inter Miami.
I have to ask you this because it went kind of viral. But does he like spray cologne on a ton before a game or what?
Yeah, I think, but there's multiple players I feel like in the league that do that. No?
Do they? I spray cologne on before I get to the game. I don't spray it on like after warm up or anything. Like I don't know. His jersey, it smelled amazing. So one of my buddies was there, and like the jersey was one of my buddies was at my house, and the jersey was like on the table, and he was like, "Dang, this is pretty sick." And he picked it up, and he was like, "Wait a minute." And he's like, "Dude, this smells like cologne." And I'm like, "I don't know what you want me to tell you, man. Like maybe he puts cologne on before the game. I don't know." But it was a very weird, interesting, unique moment.
It's Messi. He's probably got a cologne guy that just douses him on the way out with it. Yeah,
sure.
That's before and after he gets passed between the first bodyguard and the second bodyguard and all that fun stuff.
I want to have a beer with his bodyguard, man.
Oh,
seems like he's
Yeah.
He seems like he's got his stuff together.
He would be down too to have a beer with. I think. Yeah, absolutely. He's like.
I feel like he's the most interesting. I feel like he's the most interesting man in MLS. Like, I want to know about that guy. I want to know about his past.
He needs to go to the All-Star game as like the All-Star security guard from the league or something.
Exactly.
I would vote for him in the fan vote. I mean, I follow him on Instagram and watch him just kick things all the time. We are running short on time. But before we let you go, we do put out we put out a call for questions on and an Instagram and YouTube comments and everything every week. And we told them you were coming on. So we've got a couple of questions that are for you. The first is for Dax and Julian. This is from Carolina on Instagram. Top players have become a lot more vocal about how intense the calendar has become, with Rodri even hinting that players might strike if something doesn't change. And of course, he tore his ACL a week later. What are your thoughts? MLS also presents an additional unique challenge with the amount of travel you have and playing through international breaks as well.
You want to take
You're saying we're short on time and you're giving us that question?
Hey, Carolina didn't skim on the words.
That's a complicated one.
Thanks, Mr. Producer Michael. No, but it's certainly, I mean, that question is a lot. And if you look at the unique perspective within MLS, I think it might not affect you anymore down the line, but for us, it's certainly something that, MLS has to look at, right? If you turn, like for us this year, even with our World Tour, I think we've played so many games, obviously CONCACAF Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, MLS, and now hopefully obviously a deep run into the playoffs. And then there's a FIFA Club World Cup that some teams might play in as well. And it just, it becomes a lot. And certainly, I'm here to bat Rodri in a way, right? And say that it's getting out of hand in a sense, but how MLS tackles that is a really, really big question, because obviously you also have the different schedule, the different calendar, right? Where you start in January, you end in December. That's a big difference to Europe, and you maybe have to adjust that at some point. And with World Cup in this country and the World Cup even expanding to more games and all these types of things, like it just seems there's like a nonstop to this, but guys are getting hurt and guys are certainly taking a toll going through that type of scheduling.
Yeah, I'll be quick. You have to find a way to make rosters bigger. Look, I'm a big proponent of Inter Miami and the fact that they, in my opinion, have created the deepest roster in MLS history. It's pretty insane how you can have, Busquets, Messi, Alba, Suarez miss, multiple games with Messi being injured for 3 months, and they're still atop the Supporter Shield standings. I mean, that speaks to their depth, right? And so that's few and far between in MLS. A lot of teams don't have that depth. And so when teams have injuries, it is very difficult to replace those players with more incredibly high level players. It's either young, unproven players, old people, old guys like me. And look, to be honest, the quality drops. I think the product drops. You have to find ways to make the salary cap bigger, bring in more high level players. So squad rotation is more of a thing, because I think Rodri's correct. I think Julian's correct, but I don't see it changing anytime soon.
The simplest solution outside of asking people to give up money in matches is expanding rosters, but I'm an armchair expert on that. The second question and final question comes from Mike on Instagram, who said, Zealand and Dax, what did you think of Julian throwing out the first pitch at the Marlins game?
Well, that's pretty sick. I got to be honest. That's great. I didn't see the pitch. Did you make it to the plate?
It's in the chat if you want to take a look real quick.
In the chat? Okay.
Yeah,
But
There we go.
I'll set the stage while you guys are watching this. So I got to walk, at the Marlins game, last home game of the season. I pitched it to the mascot. So there's like 4 or 5 different people always doing a ceremonial pitch before kind of the actual first pitch. So it wasn't really the actual first pitch, but the mascot stood in front of the plate.
Yeah, he blew it. The mascot blew it.
He did.
That was a good pitch.
He dropped the ball too.
He dropped it. You gave him a little heat.
Yeah,
I threw it right at his face because I thought I was going to throw it all the way to the plate, but I feel like he couldn't really see very well either.
Quick story. Sorry, all baseball lovers out there. Not a big baseball guy here. I got to be honest. Okay. Not my favorite sport in the world. But this ties back into Mr. Bastian Schweinsteiger being a legend. He was asked to throw out the first pitch at Wrigley for the Cubs one game. And he went out, he did it. And there's a massive tradition in Chicago with the Cubs about singing the 7th inning stretch. And so me, Basti, and a homegrown player, Drew Connor, we got to go up in the press box and we got to sing the 7th inning stretch to the entire sold out stadium at Wrigley. And that for me, not being a baseball guy, that for me is like a top 10 life experience because it was incredible. I still get goosebumps and chills thinking about it. And so it's just another thing Basti hooked up for an old guy.
Well, how did he do? How can Basti carry a tune?
He would have struggled by himself. I'll put it that way. He was lucky. He was lucky. He had 2 other people with him. So, and to be fair to him, all 3 of us would have struggled individually. But like we were kind of like the Backstreet Boys. We made each other better. We have different pitches and tones, and it sounded right. It sounded good.
That's why they selected the players, right? You had 3 different, baritone, bass.
Go. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep,
Perfect.
Exactly right.
And before you head out, I know you have your own podcast. Or where can people find that? How can they keep up with you?
Major League Journeyman. It's myself, Alan Gordon, MLS Cult Hero, and Dan Gargan. Pretty
what a
decent.
What a crew.
Yeah, pretty decent fullback back in his day. Both of them MLS Cup champions. They like to remind me of that on the regular. We talk shop. We love talking about MLS. We love talking soccer, just like we did here on this podcast. I really like what you guys are doing. You guys are doing cool stuff. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere, and YouTube. We do YouTube as well. So
Hey,
check us out.
Nice.
Well,
you guys are called Major League Journeyman, right?
Correct.
That's the podcast.
That's it.
That's all in the name. I love it.
Julian, you're close. We are about to accept you into the journeyman world. I think if you go to one more team, you will be a journeyman, my friend.
I'm right there with you. I know.
Maybe you'll end your career in Miami. Who knows?
We'll see. But Dax, thanks so much. This has been awesome. Thank you so much. Congratulations again on an unbelievable career. And I have one little quick story at the end here.
Sure.
So there was a moment in the game, which was actually right before we scored. Campana scored the free kick against Atlanta. which you unfortunately deflected into your own goal, not to mention it. But you were really upset about that call.
I was.
And I kind of walk over. I think I was getting the ball to kind of kick back to Campana or somebody who was taking it. And I walk right past you, and you just turn around and you scream at the referee and just scream, "Criminal!" You were just screaming "criminal" at the ref in that moment. And I just kind of like chuckled. I was like,
it's probably how I felt.
Yeah. It was awesome.
In the moment, it was probably a foul, looking back on it, but I also felt like it was soft. I think it was Benjamin Kromoski went down.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was going down pretty light the entire game. And so that, coupled with the fact that it was a dangerous free kick right outside the box, you just get weird feelings about that. I think we had just scored. I think we had just equalized. So that really bothered me. And so I was pissed off. And the only, I don't like to say bad words to refs anymore. I used to be very mean. So criminal was the first thing that popped into my head, because I felt like that was a crime to call that. But 'tis what it is. It ended up being a crazy game. That was quintessential chaotic MLS right there.
Absolutely. Nothing was criminal about you being on here. So thank you so much. And all the best, obviously, the rest of the way with the playoff push. Good luck, and maybe we'll meet one more time in the playoffs. But really appreciate you and what you've done in for this league and throughout your whole career.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys, and best of luck to you guys too, Julian. I know you guys don't need it, but all the best.
Thank you again to Dax. A quick update on the jersey giveaway. Friday, September 27th is your last day to enter to win that signed Julian Gressel Inter Miami third kit, match worn in the podcast recording booth, which, that's better than a match worn game jersey anyways. So you can get your hands on that. All you have to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel and comment on a previous podcast episode to enter. I'm going to be doing that, so good luck competing against me. And we have another special giveaway coming soon. It's a big one. Tune in next week to find out about it. But that's it. Subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Dax. We'll see you next week.